Welcome back to FastFreddyRC, and today we're going to start the build process of the Tamiya Porsche 934 50th Anniversary Edition on the new 50th Anniversary chassis, and of course the bespoke back end here, which I think is just going to be super cool to build. So obviously I normally say, well, before you get started, definitely get yourself a set of ball bearings. Well, this kit comes with a full set of ball bearings, so we don't need to talk about that. But what you do need, as I mentioned in the unboxing, is you're going to need a servo, and I'm going with the standard SU300. You are going to need a motor, and I am going to go with the GT Tune Motor 2, which is the new motor for the 50th anniversary year, but depending on how soon I can get my hands on one, I may need to put in a GT Tune motor first and then swap it out, but we'll see how far I get and whether the motor is going to be available in time. And then of course I'm going with the standard Hobbywing 1060 ESC for this. So those are the items that we're going to be using in the build, so I'm just going to push those aside for the moment. So let's go over the manual, because this is a fairly involved kit, let's say. There's a lot going on, and it's brand new, so it's going to be quite an interesting build even for me. Now with this stuff, we'll just pass over to here and we'll move on to step 1. Now it says charging the battery pack. I tend to not bother with this. I know full well that even the first 19 steps isn't anywhere close to needing a battery, so I will not be charging this right off the bat. I just don't see the point. So I'll end up moving into step 2, which is attaching the front suspension mount, and you can see that we're going to be attaching all of these to the bathtub frame. A lot of interesting pieces for this, so this is going to be quite an interesting build. Then in step 3, we're going to be working on the front arms, and you can see there's a lot of these little grub screws and distances you have to be aware of. So we're going to need to put in all of these pieces. Again, interesting design. Then in step 4, we're going to attach the front arms to the chassis. Then in step 5, front uprights 1. So we're going to be working on these front uprights and putting them together. There are definitely a lot of interesting little pieces that have to go into this. And you even put on the K9 pieces right away, which is interesting. That's almost one of the last things you usually do, those hex pieces. Then in step 6, front uprights 2, well, you can see that we're going to take those and add them to these uprights. And of course we've got these connector pieces, ball connector pieces that we need to put in. We've got this piece here, same thing. We've got ball connectors and different hex hardware pieces. So interesting. Then in step 7, we're going to attach the front uprights. And of course we have this little wrench, which they'll have in the kit. It's a really difficult one. I'll show you in this step. I have something different now, so we'll be using that instead more than likely. Shows you what the distance needs to be for these, and then we're going to attach those upper ones to those uprights, and then we're going to attach the bumper mount as well on this. So that's interesting. So that's attaching those front uprights. Then in step 8, attaching the rebound stopper panel. Interesting name, rebound stopper panel. So that piece has to be attached. So then in step 9, we're going to be working on the front stabilizer and getting it all set and ready to be installed on the chassis. So there we go, step 10, attaching the front stabilizer, and you can see how that's going to be attached. We've got some connector pieces, ball nut pieces, and then that'll be attached to that, and just you have to watch the positioning of it. And of course they're showing you how you would put this together and make sure you've got the height right. And then of course back here you've got these pieces here that then get screwed down as well. And then we have these little grub screws that also need to be attached, just more to hold everything down basically. Interesting. Then in step 11, we're going to be working on the steering linkage. So we've got to put all of this together. Same thing. We've got the wrench, we're going to have to get the distances correct and put that all together. And it's actually showing you putting a little bit of grease on there for a change. That you don't normally see that. Then in step 12, we're going to attach the steering linkage. So we'll be placing that on the chassis, and you can see that's all going to go. Oh, I see. We're going to attach that, the ball connectors as well, to the ball nuts. Interesting. And then, of course, we're into bag B for going on to step 13, which is the differential gear. So this is the build of that differential. Kind of an interesting design for sure. We looked at a couple of those pieces in the unboxing, and you can see there is the diff oil. Aha! So that oil that we looked at, that was a clear bottle that had nothing, no labeling on it, it's probably the diff oil. So this will be interesting because I've not actually built a differential that is an oil differential. It's usually using the grease or making the ball differential. Interesting. Very, very cool. So then in step 14, we're going to be working on the gearbox. So we're going to be putting all of these gears into that gearbox. Interesting design. And then in 15, attaching gears 1. So you can see how all of this is going to end up fitting together on that aluminum, our anodized aluminum piece. And, oh yeah, we can push all of that in. Interesting. Then in step 16, attaching gears 2, well, we're going to be working on some more gears here that we need to attach to the top of that aluminum piece. And you can see that we're going to need to make sure the gears are put together properly so that we've got enough free motion in there. So that's step 16. Then in step 17, attaching gears. Now this is where it gets interesting because this is the chassis layout. So if you are not going with the standard wheelbase for the Porsche 934, you can adjust this to a 251 millimeter wheelbase, but that would mean skipping right through this and going to page 26, and we are on page 10. Now this is going to be obviously built as our 934, so we will be continuing through this. So 17, attaching the gearbox, you can see how that's all going to go. We're going to need to remove those 2 bits of plastic on that back end, and then we'll attach the gearbox. Then in step 18, we're going to be working on the spur gear and putting that all together. Then in step 19, we're going to attach the motor mount, and this is also where we're going to be attaching the motor. And again, depending on when I get to this, I may have to put on the GT motor for now while I wait to be able to get the GT motor too. Then in step 20, attaching the motor, well, you can see that we have this little drive shaft here that's going to run the gear, and then we'll run the drivetrain. But this is all new to me, so this is really quite cool to see the dog bone shaft coming right off the motor, which will end up running the transmission. Very cool. And then 21, attaching the rear damper mount. So that's all going to be put onto the chassis. Interesting, and it looks like we've got body mount posts here too, but I'm going to use the magnetic body mounts for this. So there is a different way of doing that, and I guess we'll see as we go along where they talk about that. Then in 22, rear axles 1. So we're going to end up putting all of this together, and you've got the universal axle that needs to be put together as well. You can see all of these different pieces. We got to grease things up. And then again, we're going to be putting on the K9 pieces. Very interesting. So yeah, this looks really quite enjoyable. Step 23, rear axles 2. Well, you can see all of this needs to be placed into these trailing arms. Yeah, really interesting design. So we're going to need to do that on both sides. So they're actually getting it fully attached to those trailing arms before we even add them to the gearbox. So very cool. Then in 24, rear axles 3. Well, once we've put all of that together, we obviously have to put in all of the pieces that are needed for installation. This is really quite interesting because this is a similar build setup to the Astute 2022, which will obviously be the same for the Avante, or Super Avante, I should say. So I'm guessing these are going to be really nice and smooth when they're attached to the chassis, because the Astute 2022 build, they work fantastic. Then in 25, attaching the rear axles, well, we're obviously going to grease up our dog bones because they're going to need to be placed into our gearbox, and then these are going to be placed into, there's one hole there, and this piece will go down and attach to that. So yeah, this is going to run really, really smooth. Then in step 26, now we're going to work on the TRF dampers. Very cool. That's going to be a lot of fun to put together. 27, dampers 2. Again, we're going to be working on this and adding some oil, getting things lubed up on both the right, or the rear, and the front. So we're making 2 and making 2 for the rear. And then in step 28, this is where we're going to add the oil to the dampers. And then in 29, dampers 3, we're going to be adding our springs and these pieces so that we can put them together, and they will be finished after step 29. Then in step 30, attaching the rear dampers. You can see how that's going to be attached. We're going to have to connect those to our ball connectors, both top and bottom. And then in step 31, attaching the front dampers. Well, we've got this front damper bracket that's got to go on, and then again, we're going to be using the ball connectors to attach the dampers top and bottom. Then in step 32, the rear stabilizer. Again, we're going to have to put the stabilizer pieces together, showing you the distances of what you need from the ball connector and the connector. And then in 33, we're going to attach the rear stabilizer. So that's, again, really interesting design. A lot of grub screws here that we're going to need to place on this, and we'll see how all that works as we go along. So that's step 33. Then in step 34, checking the RC equipment. So this is where we're going to make sure that our servo is in neutral, and we're going to add all of the servo saver pieces. And of course, this has a high torque servo saver, so that's a really nice addition to this kit. So we're going to need to do all of that, which we'll talk more about as we get to that step. And then in step 35, attaching the steering servo. Again, they're showing you greasing up these ends before going into the ball connectors, and then we're going to attach the servo to this A2 piece. Interesting. And then in 36, attaching the RC equipment. Well, this is where we're going to attach our servo to the chassis. And of course, because of the way this is designed, you really can go with a regular servo as opposed to a more expensive low profile servo. So that's great. Then you can see here down below, we've got to add our receiver and our ESC, and you can see where the ESC is going to go, which means the cable length should work out to be enough, because a lot of these ESCs and the motors have very short leads now. So as long as that's there, it should be good in terms of the placement. And you can see here too, they're showing you using double-sided tape for the receiver switch, which is interesting because, you know, your Tamiya's ESCs, they often will screw them down. Well, because they don't really include the Tamiya ESC these days, and they use the hobby wing, this is just as good, which means you can pretty much do the same thing no matter what ESC you have for your kit. Then in step, oh, did I miss something? Oh. For step 37, we're going to attach the RC equipment. So you can see that we're going to use the zap straps and just try and get everything cleaned up and tied down so nothing is interfering with any of the components. Then in step 38, we're going to work on the rear wheels, and it looks like we're going to need to paint the inserts on those chrome wheels before we put them into the tires, both the front and the rear. And of course, they're showing you gluing them down, so I don't know if I'll be doing that, as we'll see when we get there. Then in 39, attaching the rear wheels. Well, you can see it's kind of an interesting design because they want you to put the main wheel and tire in, then the piece, then the lock nut. So these are kind of loose until you screw them all down with the nuts. Interesting. Then in step 40, attaching the front wheels. Well, same thing again. We're going to put those on, then the piece, then the lock nut. And then of course we're going to add our bumper in this step as well. Then in step 41, attaching the motor guard. Well, we got to add that to the bottom and the top, which basically will enclose the motor, protecting it. And then in 42, installing the battery pack. Well, you can see how that's all going to go. And then there's these two pieces by the looks of it that are going to be used to hold everything down. So that'll be interesting. I assume you can just turn them or something so that you don't have to unscrew them when you want to get the battery out. But I guess we'll see when we get into the build. Then we're moving into step 43, which is cutting out the body. And you can see here, if using the display model magnet affixed body mounts do not make the holes indicated. Well, that's self-explanatory. And I just think with this kit, I don't want to put the holes in the body, so I'm going to use the magnetic mounts even though I'm going to run this. So we'll see how this goes. And then in 44, we're going to be painting the body, getting it all set and ready to go. And then in 45, we're going to work on the markings. And as we looked at in the unboxing, there are a lot of markings for this kit. So that's going to take some time to put together. And then in 46, markings 2, same thing. A lot of work to do getting the markings all correct. So I'll be spending quite a bit of time on this step. And then in 47, the side mirrors. You can also see that there are pieces here that we need to paint. And again, this piece here came pre-painted in the cobalt green. So that's interesting. I don't know. I'll have to see how this all goes when we get to this step. Then in 48, attaching body parts. Well, we're going to attach our mirrors and we're going to attach our wing. Very, very cool. Now in 49, cutting out the cockpit. Well, this is going to take some time to do because this is going to require a lot of detail work, and I plan on doing a decent detail job with this, so this will take some doing. But I think it's going to be really fun to paint it up and see what this ends up being. Then in step 50, the cockpit. Again, we're working on this, but now we're going to add our steering wheel, our shifter, our helmet, and of course there were choices, so we can figure out which way we want to go with this. Do we want the face, or do we want the visor? I have to think about that. I'm not sure which way I want to go yet. And then in 51, they're showing you how to attach the cockpit. So it looks like we're just going to be using double-sided tape to attach this. And then in 52, it's showing you how to attach the body. Now here in this step, they're showing you the pins, as you know, depending on whether you cut out the holes. But it looks like, well, we'll get to it in a second. It looks like for 52, they're really focused on you using the body mount posts and the snap pins. And then options. Well, we can put a lighting kit in this. I don't know if I'm going to right away, but it is an option. So they're showing you how you would put it all together for the front and rear if you decide to do that. And of course, there's our TLU01 light kit piece. Now for display, this is where they're talking about make 4 of these pieces, and this is how you would use it if you're going to go for the magnetic body mount posts. I guess I'm going to have to see how their magnetic body posts work. Whether they're solid enough that you could actually drive this without the popping off. I don't know. It looks interesting. It's not what I was expecting in terms of how the posts would go together. They seem... I don't know. I guess we'll see. we'll see when we get to that. I'm not 100% sure whether that is going to work or not. And then of course here we are. If we had gone for the 251 millimeter wheelbase, we've got to move on to page 26, and I'm not going to go through all of this because that's not what the plan is, but it's showing you a whole other set of instructions based on you doing the 251 millimeter wheelbase. So that's kind of interesting, how you can actually make this, I guess, for a different kit. So setting up, they're actually showing you how to set it up properly. You can see how the rear pinion gear and teeth and the gear ratio, so that's interesting. We'll play around with that later, I'm sure. And then of course they're showing you I guess adjustable suspension mounts. This is how you would do it if you want to make some adjustments. Interesting, I guess for degrees by the looks of it. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so that's another thing to play around with. We'll see it as we go. And then here, this one is, attaching a cooling fan. So if you have a cooling fan, this is how you would do it. Interesting. Okay, well, now of course that's just showing you bits, pieces, all your parts trees, etc., spare parts, all that sort of jazz. But really, we are finished the manual overview in this case. So if you are going to be following along, please like and subscribe. You'll get notified of the different videos as they come out. I am going to start on this kit relatively soon. So until next time, we'll see you in another video.